Hello, my name is Marc Sommerfeld. Welcome to my shop. Today we're going to show you how to build a glass panel door like this one right here. Also, we're going to show you how to make a glass panel door that has a divided light to it like this one, 4 divisions. You can see in the back we have 4 different pieces of glass. Also, we're going to show you how to get rid of these divisions here on the back where we have 1 piece of glass, but it still looks divided on the front. And lastly, we're going to show you how we make our glass panel door with an arched top to it. And doing all this, we're going to be using our glass panel set here. So let's get started. In building our glass panel door now, the first thing we want to do is determine how big to make the pieces. We always make our stiles here, our 2 stiles, 2 7/16 inches wide, and our top rail and bottom rail 2 7/16 inches wide. The reason we do that is because our router bit set here cuts a 7/16 inch engagement. Let me show you what I mean by that. You can see when I cut my profile and my cope, when the 2 go together there, I have a 7/16 engagement, right? And what we're doing, if this piece here is 2 7/16, we're losing 7/16 of an inch. Okay, so if we got 2 7/16, 2 7/16, we lose 7/16 and 7/16. That leaves me with 2 inches here and 2 inches here. Well, that 2 and 2 is 4 inches. That's my magic number. So if I'm making a door, let's say that is 12 inches wide, all I have to do is subtract 4, and I immediately know that this rail is going to be 8 inches. Okay? And as far as up and down goes, if my door is going to be 18 inches long, I simply make that piece 18 inches. So now you know how to arrive at the dimensions of your door. Okay, the first cut we're going to make, like I said, is the 2 cope cuts on the ends of the rails. To do that, we're going to use the cope cutter in our set here. We're going to sit that in our router, snug it up, and we'll be ready to go. Now, the first thing that you have to do is you have to get that bit set to the correct height. Okay? Well, the piece of wood we're using here is 13/16 of an inch thick. Okay? We have a neat little jig right here. It's called an easy set. What you can do is you can dial this into any thickness of wood. Right here, you start at the star. We have instructions that come with this that show you how to operate it. But we'll come into 13/16. We're going to dial this to 13/16, which is right there. You can see it. Okay? Once we have it dialed to the right thickness of wood, what we do is find the profile here. There's 8 different profiles. We find the profile for the glass panel, which is right here. We set that over there, and you can see my bit is a little bit too low. So I'm going to unlock my router and bring that bit up until it fits in there. It conforms right to the shape of that easy set. I'm right perfectly set to the right height. So I'll lock my bit in, and I'm ready to go. This little easy set jig saves me a lot of time in setting the bits correctly. Okay. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to set our fence so our fence flush with our bearing. We take a straight edge on the front of our bearing, pivot my fence so we're flush with that bearing. We're ready to start cutting right there. Okay, move it in just a hair more. We're ready to cut. Now, whenever we do any cutting on any of my sets, we always put the good side down. Okay, here's our two rails. We're going to put the good side down. When we run these through, what we're going to do, So we're going to use a push block. We don't use the old-fashioned miter gauge. We just got a push block here. It's a square piece of wood, and I just screwed a push block to it. What that push block does, it keeps my board square to the fence, and it also prevents any chip out at the back of the cut. I'll show you after we make the cut how it works. So we'll turn our router on here and make our 2 cope cuts. You can see right there's no chip out at the back of my cut because we're following right behind with that backer. We've made the 2 cope cuts on the ends of our rails. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to change bits, and the next bit is designed to go with the grain. So our 2 styles can join in now. So we're going to change bits and cut with the grain. Now, here's the nice thing about changing bits with our sets. All of our sets are perfectly matched height-wise. What I mean by that, when I take this bit out now, and I take the next bit in, I don't have to worry about setting the height again because our 2 bits are perfectly matched height-wise, just like that. So all you have to do is drop it in and you're ready to go. Now, you're not supposed to do that because when you tighten a bit up, that bit has to suck down into the collet to get tight. Well, in the bottom of the collet, we put a little rubber grommet. You can read about it in our catalog. The little rubber grommet in there. And now, when I go to tighten up that bit will compress against that rubber grommet exactly the same every time, and we're in business. So that's how unique our bits are on our sets. We're set up. We're ready to make our second cut with no adjustment on the height of the bit. The only thing we have to do is bring our fence into here, and we have to bring our fence flush with that bearing again, right there, to make our finished cut. But you'll see when we make our pattern cut here, you can see right here, we're making a very, very deep cut. It's a big rabbit cut. So we hate to make that cut in one pass. So what I'm going to do is move my fence ahead just a little bit, and we're going to take this cut in 2 passes. It makes it a little bit easier and just a little bit safer to make that cut that way. So again, we're going to use our push block, put the good side down, and make our pattern cuts, the first one. Okay, you can see we've got the first cut made. Now, what we're going to do is finish the cut by moving the fence back, making it in 2 passes. Now, we're going to take the bearing flush with the fence. Lock it down right there. Move the fence ahead. Lock it down. We're ready to make our second pass now. Same thing, good side down. Now we'll be making contact with that bearing in the middle. Okay, we've got our 2 styles done. All we do is take our cope cuts, fit into our pattern cut right like that on both sides. And that's how easy it is to make a glass panel door. Just right like that. All you do is line these up, your stiles and rails up on the ends. And basically your glass panel door is built that quick. Okay, here's our door, and I have a piece of plastic here to simulate some glass here to show you. Our glass is going to fit into our rabbet joint here. Now, a lot of guys, what they'll do is they'll cut a wood strip along all four edges, and they'll nail. I won't nail that in, but when I nail that, sometimes I split the wood, I break the glass, so I don't like doing that. Some guys will take these little plastic things and turn them. I don't like doing that either. So the way we're going to do it is we have this panel retainer that we have. Okay, it comes in a 25-foot roll. And once that glass is in there, you can see we cut a little groove right in there into our stiles and on our rails. What that does, it allows this panel retainer, and you can cut this with a scissors, miter the corners and everything, but this panel retainer has a small little leg on it. And what's going to happen is that's going to snap into that groove real slick, just like that. See? Goes right down there. You can go all the way around your door, miter your corners, and it's a very neat way of holding your glass in. Holds it in really tight. If your glass ever breaks, you can replace it very easily. So, let me show you how we're going to cut that groove into our stiles and rails next. Okay, to do that, we're going to use this little sliding cutter in our set. That's the third bit in our set. Okay, and again, we change bits here. We'll take our bent wrench, comes down in here. My left hand comes in, pushes it on my spindle lock. Okay, all I have to do is just nudge that bit. That bit comes out, and again, all three bits are the same height. We just drop that bit on our rubber grommet, and we're good to go. That quick and easy. Put my insert ring back in, and we're ready to cut. Now, there's a bearing on the bottom of this cutter, okay? And that's where I have to line up my fence again. There's a bearing on the bottom. You can see it right there. You can feel it. My fence pivots to where that bearing's at, and I'm ready to go. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to put our good side down always, and we're going to cut that groove. Here's my rabbet joint right here. We're going to cut the groove into the rabbet right like that. Okay, you can see that little groove we cut right there, slot. Now we got to do the same thing on our stiles, but we can't start cutting right away. Otherwise, when we put the two together on the outside of the door, you're going to see that little slot right there, see? So what we have to do when we do our stiles is start a little bit shy and end a little bit shy. So we'll make those cuts here next. Okay, we've got our door basically done. Here's our two stiles, and here's our two rails, top rail and the bottom rail right here. All we have to do now is take and apply a little bit of glue on our stile and our rail. Take this and sit in our clamps. We're going to do that next. Take and stick it in our clamps, clamp it up, and our glass panel door is done. We've got our square glass panel door done. Now what we want to do is make an arched glass panel door. To do that, all we're going to do is substitute this square rail like here with an arch like this. To do that, what we need to do is keep the same length, of course, but we're going to make the width of that piece 4.5 inches. And after we've got that piece cut out now, what we need to do next is change bits. We're going to put the cope cutter in that we had to begin with and start again by making the cope cuts. Okay, we've got our cope cutter back in there. That's the original cope one we started with at the beginning. We're going to make our two cope cuts on the ends of that top arched rail. Again, using our push block. Okay, there's our 2 cope cuts. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we have to put that arch into that top rail. Okay, to do that, we've got a set of templates. And our templates come in different sizes, starting with 9.5, 10.5. They go up in 1-inch increments all the way up to a 22-inch door. So you can make any size door you want. Well, the door I'm making today is going to be about a 13-inch wide door. So we're going to use a template that says 13.5, 14.5. All of our templates have a center point. All I have to do is line that center point up with the center line I found in that top rail already right there. Okay? I'm going to line those 2 center lines up right like that, and then I'm going to nail that template on the back side. Now, the next thing we have to do is we have to take this top rail to our bandsaw, and I'm going to bandsaw this out to within about 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch so we can flush trim it and get it exact. You can see we have that rail cut out to within about 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch or so of our template. Now the next thing we're going to do is stick a simple flush trim bit into our router, and we're going to flush trim that rail to the same shape as our template. But before we do that, I want to make some jigs with this router bit, this cope cutter, while I still have it in there for our next operation. And all I'm going to do is cut a cope cut along this piece right here, and I'm going to cut some cope cuts on these scrap woods. And you'll see later where they're going to be put to use. But I just want to do it while I have that cope cutter in there right now. Okay, you can see we got cope cuts cut all on these 4 edges of these 2 little blocks here and 1 on here. I'll show you later when we do our divided light where these are going to come in handy. Alright, right now what I need to do is change this bit. I'm going to insert my flush trimming bit in, and then I'll show you how we flush trim that top rail. Okay, we're ready to take that cope cutting bit out of there now. And we're going to insert that flush trimmer in there. Snug it up, and we're ready to go. Okay. Put my insert on here. Now, what I have to do, this bit is not part of the set, so you can see it's not matched. What I have to do is I have to lower that bit so the bearing is riding on my template. So I'm going to go down here and lower that bit so that the bearing is riding on the template. Or another way of doing it is the top of the carbide right here is right at the top of the cut, right? Right there. We want to make sure, I'm going to lock it in. We want to make sure that that carbide cutter is cutting all of our wood. All right, we're set to the right height. We're ready to start flush trimming this top rail. Now, whenever you have a small diameter router bit in there, you always want to turn the speed of your router up as fast as it'll go. And you'll see what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be making contact with my template out here. I don't want to start on the wood. I'm going to start out here, stop the bearing, and then you'll see me make the cut just like that. All right? So we're going to turn the speed up on the router. On the template, see? you can see now we made that top rail the same exact shape as whatever template we happen to be using. The next thing we have to do is we have to make this profile cut right here on the top of the rail on to this rail right here. So we're going to change bits and put the pattern cutting back in and show you how we make that cut. We've got our pattern cutting bit back into our router, and we had to reset that to the correct height as we did our original stiles and rails. Now, we're going to take this arched top here now, and the template will make contact with that bearing on the top of our cutter, and we're going to make our cut just like we did with our flush trim bit a little while ago. So we're going to make that cut right now. Show you how it's done. Right there is our pattern cut made to fit on our arched glass panel door. Okay, there's our glass panel door. We have it just dry clamped together with my hands here now. And I'll explain a little bit about the back here when you cut your glass. You can see we have a curve. You have to cut the glass at a curve, and it's fairly easy to do with a glass cutter once you get the hang of it. If you'd rather not do that, what you're going to have to do is take a straight bit on a router and just mill all this piece out right in here. I'll mill all this out with a straight bit, and then you can cut a square piece of glass and drop in like that. Either way will work. But that's your arched glass panel door. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to take that arched glass panel door that I have here, and we're going to show you how we're going to make divided lights into that glass panel door. We're ready to start making our divided light door. And to cut our muttons and mullions, here's how we figure dimensioning on that. Remember how our door was 12 inches wide? We subtracted 4 to get our rail at 8 inches. Well, same thing goes up and down. If our door we're 2 7/16 here, and our templates automatically give you a 2 7/16 inch reveal at its narrowest point. So just assume this is a regular square door, 2 7/16, 2 7/16. So if our door is 20 inches long, let's say, I subtract 4, and that gives me 16 inches for this mutton right here. So it's very easy. I know the length of this. It's 16 inches. Okay, now I need to find the length of these two pieces. These are two separate pieces. Well, if this piece on the bottom of our rails are 8 inches, this combined length is going to be 8 inches also, but we're bypassing in the middle here. We're not connecting. Well, what's that measurement? Here's how we figure it. Remember our profile cuts 7/16 here and 7/16 inch here. 7/16 and 7/16 is 7/8, right? I always cut all of my muttons and mullions 1 1/8 inches. So 1 1/8 minus 7/8 leaves me with 1/4 of an inch right here in the middle where I'm not connecting with these two pieces. So if I divide that 1/4 of an inch into this piece and this piece, that means I have to subtract 1/8 of an inch off of this one and 1/8 of an inch off of that one. So if this is 8 inches, this would be 4 and 4, but we subtract an 1/8 and an 1/8. So these two pieces here will be 3 7/8 inches long. And all of our muttons and mullions are 1 1/8. Okay. Now, the first one I'm going to make is the long one. We always make the long ones first, 16 inches. And if you're doing a bunch of doors and they're all the same, let's say, which happens a lot, we're going to cut, let's say we're going to cut 2 or 3 of these that are going to be 16 inches long. Well, we have to cut the cope cuts first, remember? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a wide piece, and it's easier to do this anyway. This piece is 16 inches, see? And we're going to cut our cope cuts. And this is going to be our muttons and mullions are going to be taken out of this piece. So we're going to cut our cope cuts all at once for all those pieces. We have our cope cutter set back in our router table, and we're going to next cut the cope cuts for our long muttons here. Okay, we've got our cope cutter set to the right height as we originally had. We're going to cut the cope cuts for all of our muttons and mullions right here. Okay, there's our cope cuts for our 1 1/8 inch muttons and mullions we're going to take out of here now. So now, what we're going to do is change bits, and I'm going to cut my pattern cut on one side right there. Okay, we're ready to change bits again, and what's nice about changing our bits, remember all we have to do is take that cope cutter out, drop the pattern cutting bit in, and we're good to go. Right like that. Okay, now we're going to bring our fence over. Our fence drops into our pivot point. There's my bearing. We'll get our fence flush with the bearing, and we're ready to start cutting the pattern cut. Right there. Now, remember, we always put the good side down. These are our muttons and mullions. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a pattern cut on this side and a pattern cut on that side using my push block. Okay, you can see we made that pattern cut, and you can hear a little bit of chipping on the router bit and everything, but we made that cut in one pass. Remember, previously we took 2 passes, so you can do it in one pass if you want. But there's our 2 muttons and mullions. I'm going to get one out of here and one over here. So now I'm going to take it back to the table saw, set it for 1 1/8 inches, and I'm going to rip out one piece here and one piece here for 2 different doors. Okay, you can see we cut these into 1 1/8 inch strips with the pattern cut there and the pattern cut there. We have to do the other side now, but you can imagine if we started out with 1 1/8 to begin with, how difficult it would be. And I used to do this, kind of run it through like that, but we figured out a better way of doing it in sections like this. So, what we need to do now is we still have a problem. We got the one side done, we have to go and do the other side. So, turn it around, and there's no way we're going to be able to hold it like this, so that's why we got to make a jig. And remember previously when we used that cope cutter? That's the cope cutter is the opposite of this cutter. Well, remember when we made that cope cut into that long sled right here? That cope cutting cut right there is the opposite of this pattern cut. Well, opposites attract, so that allows me to engage this piece into here. Now I can very safely take this thing and run it through with one hand using my push block screwed down to my jig. But the only thing is, when that bit's turning at high speed, it's going to want to come in here and kick this thing back. So what we got to do to prevent that is put a stop on our sled. And you can see right here where our cope cut's made, all I have is a little stop right here. And that stop is going to go right there. I'm going to screw it in, and that'll prevent that kickback. So let's screw this in. I'm going to bring it around. Take my screw gun right here. There, now we got our stop, and our piece is not going to come, it's going to stop. So now we can make our pattern cut very safely. And again, we'll show you making the cut in one pass. Even though that's a big rabbit cut, we'll make it in a slow speed, and we'll make it in one pass. And right there is how easily and safely you can cut your muttons and mullions with that jig right there. We've got our 2 cope cuts. Nice pattern cut. Now, that piece is going to be fitting right into the middle right there. What we have to do next is cut these 2 shorter pieces, and I'll show you how we do that next. Okay, we're ready to take, and we've got the long ones done, but we're going to take this long one now and cut the other side, and then we're going to cut that into our short pieces, our 3 7/8 inch pieces. So let's load this into our sled here now. And we'll make our pattern cut on the other side. Okay, now all we have to do is take this, and we're going to take this back to our miter sled, and we're going to cut this into the right lengths, which are 3 7/8, which I've already done on this section right here. You can see we've got our muttons and moles to the right lengths now, 3 7/8, a bunch of them. A couple of them already have the cope cuts cut from the two ends. Okay, now the next thing we have to do is cut the cope cut on the other end. And while we're doing it, let's cut the cope cuts on the ends of these too. So what we're going to do next is change bits and put the cope cutter back in. Okay, we're ready to take that pattern cutting bit out of there again and insert the cope cutter right on our rubber grommet. Makes it easy. Insert ring goes in, and we're ready to make our cope cuts. So what we have to do is move the fence in here again and get it flush with that bearing like we always do. Now, what we have to do is we've got the cope cut done here already. We have to take and cut a cope cut here. And I tell you what, there's no way we're going to use that little push block again and put my hands in here and do that. What we used to do is cut a little cope cut into here, insert this into here, but we found a better way yet. What we did, remember those 2 jigs we made earlier that we cut the cope cuts all the way around? We're going to use that as we're going to make a sandwich. We're going to sandwich this little mutton and mole right in there like that, and we're going to put this one in here like that. And we can hold that together. Now, when we make our cope cut on the end grain there, there's going to be no chippage because it's going to be one unit as we pass it through, right like this. Okay? So we'll just come into here, turn our router on, and make our cope cuts. Very easy way of cutting cope cuts on small pieces. We can take that out and there's no chipping at all. Okay? So we'll do that on the remainder of our muttons and moles, and we'll be ready to take and put our divided light door together. Okay, we've got our divided light door kind of dry clamped up here now. You can see what I did. I found the center of my bottom rail and the center of my top rail so I can line my mutton there. We found the center where we want these pieces going here and did that. And once you find the outside two, take a square and transfer it across and put a mark in the center so you get these two pieces going straight with each other. All right. You can see though, right now, we got a little bit of a problem here. This bottom rail is sticking down maybe just a fraction, a 32nd of an inch here, you know, and we're a little bit shy. And the reason is we're a little bit shy here on our top mutton here. So the reason because of that is because the backs of our muttons and mullions are cut square where we have an arch here. So what we have to do is we have to take and sand, just take some sandpaper and sand that rounded just a little bit of a radius on that back side of that cope cut. That's all you have to do, okay, to get that to fit. The other thing, when we used when we sandwiched and cut these, we didn't get any chipping going on, but what we did, if you look really close right here, we got a little bit of fuzz there, see? What I like to do there is take some fine sandpaper and just back sand that, right like this, see? On each side. I'll do that on all the 4 pieces, okay? Same. I'll just dress them up like that. And it should be just a little bit of a curve there. Okay? That kind of cleans them up nice, gets rid of the fuzz to make a nice door. All right. What we're going to do next now is I'm going to take this out, sand my back of my cope, and then we're going to insert and show you how we glue up this divided light door. Okay, we've got our middle mutton here all sanded here on the cope cut so it fits into here. And we got our 2 middle pieces coming into here. Now, if you've ever attempted to glue up one of these divided light doors, it could be a nightmare for you. What you have to do is glue your cope cuts on your regular door. There's 4. Your cope cuts here, 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 and here, 4 more, and inside here, that's 2 more. That's about 10 different places you're gluing, and it can become kind of a hard thing to do. So what I like to do is take this middle section and glue this up independently of that. And then I'm going to treat this like a regular raised panel door and insert it into my glass panel door like that, let's say. So to glue this now, I like to use it when I'm doing the divided lights. This glue we have here, it's called 2P10. 2 parts, 10 seconds. All you have to do is put 1 drop of this glue right where you want to glue it. Let's put 1 drop right here. And this part, this is my activator. It activates it, and you don't have to worry about that staining the wood or anything. We'll put the two together right there and hold it. 10 seconds. That's why it's called 2P10. 2 parts, 10 seconds, you're set. Okay? So it makes it a lot easier gluing up the doors with this type of glue. Take my other mutt. Like I said, this evaporates right away and you can stain right over it. We'll put this one directly across from it. And we hold that about another 10 seconds. Okay, now when we're ready to start gluing up this door, we're going to use a regular tight bond glue and glue up the joints here. And also I use tight bond here on these 4 corners here. It's a lot easier to glue up that door. So that's what we'll do next. We'll bring our tight bond glue in here and glue up our door. Okay, we've got the door all glued up now, and that's our divided light door with the arch top. And this divided light door has 4 separate divisions, as you can see. On the back, when you put your glass in, you're going to have to cut 4 different pieces of glass. Okay? Now, I personally don't like that. I like to get lazy and have 1 piece of glass in there, but still have it look like a divided light on the front. Now, if I'm going to do that, what I have to do, that means I have to get rid of these dividers, these little fins right here that separate the glass. And I'll show you how we're going to do that with our next bit. Okay, that next bit we're going to use is the same bit we used on the that slotting cutter bit we used to cut that groove. We're going to insert that into our router, snug it up, and we're ready to go. Now, the only thing is, remember I said where all of these bits are automatically set to the correct height? Well, it's not going to be this time because we're using it for a different operation. Remember how we used to cut the groove in there for that rubber panel retainer with this? We're going to use the same bit, but what I'm going to do, you can see there, I'm going to lower that bit down so that carbide is right level with the back of my divided light. So let me lower that down. And a better way of doing that is we're going to cut it in the sled anyway, so let's insert it into the sled so that we're nice and level. And I'll lower that, now we're perfectly level, and I'll lower that down. And I like to lower it, just move this board until it catches. Right there, we're just catching, we're making the bit go. So we're just taking off a little bit. Lock the bit in, and we're ready to go. Now, we're going to move the fence again so we're flush with that bearing. And again, we can put this right underneath here. And right there, you can see where the bearing, we're going to slice that piece off. Right like that. So we'll put our glasses on and make that cut. See where we started to make the cut. Okay, what we got to do is move the fence back just a little bit more. Didn't have it quite set right. Quite deep enough right there. Now we'll make it again. And as I run that through there, I like to hang on to that board because if I don't, that thing will kick back like that. So right there you can see we have that perfectly undivided light, I call it now. Now, the only thing, when we go to glue this now, see we don't have that cope cut locking it anymore. All we have now is a lap joint. We're going to take this piece and these dividers are gone. All we have is a lap like this. So again, how are we going to glue that? Go back to our 2P10. Let's say we're gluing this up in our door. Again, just 1 little drop on there. And we don't have that cope cut anymore. All we have is a lap joint. But again, if you take this right like that and you hold it 10 seconds, you're set. This glue, it doesn't cure. It takes about 24 hours to cure, but it bonds in about 10 seconds and you'll be set. Right there. Okay? So that's how we make the undivided light on the back here. You just take that bit and slice off all these pieces and glue them up with your 2P10. All right. Next thing we're going to do is show you how we're going to drill the holes for our hardware and also insert the hinges. And we also put a detailed edge around the outside of all of our doors. I'll show you how we do all those three things next. The bit we're going to use to make that detailed edge around the outside of the door is our door detailer. It comes in our 6-piece cabinet making set, I guess you can get it individually also. We're going to lock that in. I've already got it set to the right height. This bit you can set to any height you want depending on what kind of a reveal you want. Okay. Make sure our bit's locked in. We're ready to go. Okay, again, all we do is take our straight edge, any old straight edge we can find. Here's a piece of a mutton mullion. Anything you need is a straight edge, works as a straight edge. With the bearing, lock the fence down, we're ready to cut. Okay, we're going to put the good side down, and we always come across the end grain first and finish up with the grain. Right there, you can see the nice detailed edge it puts around the outside. You can make that deeper, shallower as you want. All right, now the next thing I'm going to show you is how we're going to put our hardware, like these little handles right here with 3-inch centers. We're going to show you how we're going to drill the holes easily and perfectly for those. All right, we're ready to put our hardware onto our door. To do that, we got a little jig called the Easy Mark, and you can see you set it on your jig. There's a stop in the back where it hits against, right there. Okay? And there's a stop right here that you can adjust for the height of your holes. All right. Now, what we got to do is find the center of your stock right there on your stile. Move this to the center. You just slide that down, move it to the center, lock it down, and you're ready to drill the holes. Now, some hardware comes 3-inch centers. Some you put one knob in the middle. Some of them are wider. You can come out to 4.5, whatever, 4 1/4. But these are 3-inch holes we're putting in. We're locked right here. Okay, and we're putting a hole here and a hole here. We just drill through these hardened bushings just like this. With a long aircraft drill we're drilling with. And that's simply and accurately your holes are drilled for your hardware. That's very simple to do with our jig. All right, next thing we're going to do is we need to put a couple of holes. We use the holes in here for our hinges, and we use the 35mm hidden hinges, and we'll show you how they operate next. Okay, we're ready to drill the holes now for our hinges in the back, and like I said, the jig we have to do that is a very simple thing called the Easy Bore. It's got 3 different spindles here that you drill the holes with, a 35mm hole and 2 8mm holes. And the way it operates, we always overlay our doors on our cabinets 1/2 inch, okay? So there's 2 little stops right here. There's instructions that come with this, but we're going to set those stops for the number 2, which is 1/2 inch overlay. All right, so we're going to bring it in here, set it on our door. Let's go right down here. And we're going to, against those 2 stops, okay, we got 2 cam clamps. We're going to clamp those down here and clamp this one down here, okay? Now, we have a hex driver that comes with it, 1/2 inch, and we're just going to drill the holes. And they're spring-loaded, you can see. See? Right like that. Even a little battery-operated drill will drill those holes. And that quickly and easily and accurately, you just drill the holes for that 35 millimeter hinge. Now, to install those hinges, very simple. The hinges we have come with little plastic dowels. All you do is insert that hinge where the two dowels line up and take a hammer, and that easily your hinge is installed, that quickly and easily, okay? Now, what you can do is take those two screws, unscrew that hinge out, stain and spray your door, and install them right back in as many times as you want, and those two dowels will never come out of there. So that's how easy it is to install the hinges on our door with our hinge boring jig. As you can see, our glass panel set is very easy to use for a variety of different types of doors, from a simple glass panel door like this to a little bit more complex door like this one. And I hope you have as much fun using it as I did showing it.